them the same, and it requires the President of the United States signature to make a bill. But not in this House. You can believe 10 impossible things before breakfast here easily, because we're called upon to do it every day.
Gentleman from California.
Madam Speaker, I give myself as time as I might consume, and I'd like to engage in a discussion with my distinguished ranking member if she would like on the issue that she just discussed. I guess we won't be engaging in a discussion on these matters, Madam Speaker. So
will the gentleman yield for a moment?
Of course, I'm happy to yield.
There was just one point. I think what the gentlelady said is that the Senate will have to vote on it, not that they had to pass it. I know that.
Well, if I could reclaim my time, there's several things that were said that I think I'd like to address. First, I'd like to say that the gentlewoman began by saying that never before in our nation's history have we had measures brought forward in this matter. Madam Speaker, that is just plain wrong. Time and time again, under both political parties, we have seen the Rules Committee report out measures that do, in fact, cover multiple issues. And so this is not unprecedented, as the gentlewoman has just said. Second, I think it's very important for us to clarify the fact that what we are voting on is an agreement that is supported by the President of the United States and the Majority Leader of the United States Senate. And part of that agreement is that the Senate will not vote to defund Planned Parenthood or vote to actually bring an end to funding for the health care bill, but it will consider these measures. And I think it's important, Madam Speaker, to make it clear the only thing that we are doing in this rule is ensuring that that agreement is enforced. And so, Madam Speaker, I think that it's clear that many of our friends on the other side of the aisle are not happy with this, with the fact that their President and the Senate Majority Leader has negotiated this agreement. Again, I don't like the agreement just like they don't like the agreement. I don't like it because I don't believe that it goes far enough. But it's very important for us to realize that this is simply a first step. It is a bold first step. As the Chairman of the Appropriations Committee has just said, Madam Speaker, it's a step which, in fact, is the largest, 4 times the largest cut we've ever had in the past. It is a cut of $40 billion. And by virtue of that agreement, we are making that first step. But if you extend this out, it will have cuts that total $315 billion. And as I said, we are just beginning the debate this week with this very, very important budget that will be considered in the Rules Committee today and tomorrow and Friday on the House floor. I also have to say that one of the reasons that we're having this debate on the rule today and voting on Thursday on the actual continuing resolution is that we put into place a very important change in the rules at the beginning of this Congress that allows unreported measures, states that unreported measures must in fact comply with the 3-day layover requirement that exists for reported measures. And we are subscribing to that and enforcing that. As we know, this measure was filed at 2 o'clock yesterday morning here in the House, and because of that filing, to ensure that it was put online, as the Chairman of the Appropriations Committee has said, so that the full membership and the American people, the media, have an opportunity to see this measure, we have done that, and that is the reason that we're going to be holding this vote on Thursday, and that's the reason that we're able to have the kind of free-flowing debate that we are. Madam Speaker, this is an agreement that no one is happy with. But it's an agreement that we've come to in dealing with the 2 political parties, and I'm going to urge my colleagues to support it. And with that, I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Colorado.
Madam Speaker, this continuing resolution is a first step, all right. It's a first step towards bankruptcy with its hokum cuts. Madam Speaker, I'm proud to yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Massachusetts, a member of the Rules Committee, Mr. McGovern.
Gentleman from Massachusetts recognized for 3 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Madam Speaker, I rise in strong opposition to this closed rule and to the underlying bill. And I want to reinforce the comments of the gentlelady from New York when she says that the issue of defunding Planned Parenthood or what your opinion is about the Affordable Care Act really has no place in this debate. It shouldn't be tied to anything. And the fact of the matter is that the Republicans are intentionally injecting these kind of very polarizing issues. And I think, let me say to all of my friends on the Democratic side, that's the reason why you should vote against this rule. I'm pleased that the Republican leadership of the House decided that it was not in anyone's interest to shut down the government. I'm also pleased that the leadership ignored the chance of shut it down coming from the most extreme elements of their party. But I'm not pleased, Madam Speaker, with this so-called compromise. This bill cuts the wrong things too deeply and ignores some of the things that could stand to be cut. The cuts target the poor and the middle class, the very people who can least afford it as we struggle to recover from the Great Recession. Meanwhile, the very wealthy and the special interests get away scot-free. Student aid programs get cut. Children's health care would be cut. Transportation funding to repair our roads and our bridges would be cut. Environmental protection would be cut. The COPS program, which helps local communities stay safe, would be cut. Investments in science and technology research would be cut. But the Defense Department, well, they got a $5 billion increase. Oil companies keep their sweetheart tax loopholes. Big agriculture keeps their subsidies. That's not fair, Madam Speaker, and that's not right. I am all for a leaner government, but I'm not for a meaner government. I'm for balancing the budget, but I'm not for balancing the budget solely on the backs of the poor and the middle class. If you want to get to a balanced budget, there needs to be some fairness in this process. And if you think that this bill is troublesome, just wait, because later this week we'll be debating the Republican budget proposal for 2012, a budget that would represent the largest redistribution of wealth from the middle class to the rich in American history. It is a budget plan that ends Medicare as we know it. It is a budget plan that tells our seniors, we want you to pay more and you will get less. Well, there are some things worth fighting for, Madam Speaker, and the protection of Medicare is one of them. So I look forward to that fight. But in the meantime, I urge my colleagues to reject this, yet again, another closed rule, and I urge them to reject the underlying bill. We can do better than this. I yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from California.
Madam Speaker, I yield myself 1 minute to say first to my friend from Boulder that the notion of arguing that a $40 billion cut is going to take us down the road to bankruptcy
Will the gentleman yield?
is absolutely preposterous.
Will the gentleman yield?
Sure, I'll yield.
Again, the cut is actually somewhere in the $15 to $20 billion range, according to both the Wall Street Journal and AP.
Madam Speaker, if I could reclaim my time, I will repeat this again so that he might be able to understand it. A $40 billion cut, or a $15 billion cut, or a $15 billion cut cannot be characterized as taking us down the road toward bankruptcy. We all want to cut more in spending. I mean, it's very clear. Now, my friend from Worcester has just made this argument about the priorities that you have, and Madam Speaker, I yield myself an additional minute. And I do so to say that I think it's important for us to look at the preamble of the U.S. Constitution whenever we're debating defense appropriations bills or the defense authorization bill. And I'm so happy that my friend Mr. Dix, the distinguished ranking member of the full committee and the Defense Appropriations Subcommittee, is here. I always argue that the 5 most important words in the middle of the preamble of the United States Constitution are provide for the common defense. Now, with all due respect to the priorities that we have, ensuring that we do care for those who are truly in need, all of these things can be done at other levels of government. Only the federal government can deal with our nation's security. And as Chairman Rogers pointed out, we are now, by virtue of a decision that the President of the United States has made, in the midst of 3 wars. I want to bring about spending cuts, and I believe that Governor Haley Barbour was absolutely right when he said, anyone who says that you can't cut defense spending has never been to the Pentagon. We want to encourage defense sharing. And in fact, we are focused on ensuring that we do get the best bang for our buck. And so, Madam Speaker, recognizing the priority that the federal government has for national security and recognizing that we're trying to bring about responsible cuts, I think this agreement is the right thing for us. With that, I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Colorado.
Appreciate the gentleman from California's willingness to look at expense spending. I know the gentleman from Kentucky mentioned we're in 3 wars. Perhaps part of the answer is to be in 2 wars or 1 war, or God forbid, perhaps we can be at peace again in our lifetimes. Madam Speaker, I'd like to yield 2 minutes to the gentlewoman from the District of Columbia, Ms. Eleanor Holmes Norton.
Gentlewoman from District of Columbia is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the gentleman from Colorado for yielding to me and for his work on this bill. Madam Speaker, the District of Columbia has no vote on the rule or the bill under consideration, yet the only controversial amendments in this bill involve only the District of Columbia. The bill is remarkably clean. There are only 4 out of 50 or so attachments survived. Not one on gray wolves, one on Guantanamo prisoners, and yeah, there's the District of Columbia. These 2, the only controversial amendments, violate the district's most basic right to self-government. One has to do with private school vouchers only for the District of Columbia, a bill we didn't ask for, a bill we weren't consulted about, and a bill we don't want. If the Rules Committee refused to recognize my amendment, which would redirect the money to the D.C. public schools and to our own public charter schools, 40% of our children go to this alternative. It has long waiting lists to our choice, not the Republicans' choice. The second amendment would strike a shameful my second amendment would strike a second rider that keeps the district from spending our own local taxpayer-raised funds on reproductive choice for our low-income women. Local money, local choice. The majority proposed to close down the government rather than pass my amendment to allow D.C. to spend its own local funds. Now the majority wants a rule with amendments that profoundly affect only the District of Columbia. I will have no vote on this floor on any part of this bill. No wonder. Appreciate the gentleman. The majority will allow a vote on every other member on what affects my district. No wonder the mayor, the city council, and residents have taken to civil disobedience. I yield back the remainder of my time.
Gentleman from California.
Madam Speaker, may I inquire of my friend how many speakers he has remaining and also how much time remains on each side?
Gentleman from California has 8.5 minutes remaining. Gentleman from Colorado has 12.5 minutes remaining.
We have 3 speakers. We're possibly expecting a 4th.
Then I'll reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves his time. Gentleman from California, or Colorado.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's my honor to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Andrews.
Gentleman from New Jersey is recognized for 2 minutes. Without objection.
Madam Speaker, I rise in favor of the common sense compromise that says to the operating departments of our government, see if you can get by on 95% of the money you had last year. I think that makes good sense, and I commend Chairman Rogers and Mr. Dix for making sure that Pell Grants, Title I, special education are fully funded and protected, and frankly salute both sides for leaving aside extraneous matters like not funding Planned Parenthood and not funding the health care bill. I think this is a worthy compromise. I'm glad to support it. I do want to note my grave concern with the rule and the rather ambiguous position we find ourselves in with respect to the actions of the Senate. About 10 days ago, the majority attempted to pass a bill where the Senate would never have to act. Now they want to say even if the House and the Senate have both acted, apparently the bill doesn't become law. Maybe we should have put a few more education funds in for constitutional studies here, because I think this is very unwise and frankly ambiguous. So I'm going to oppose the rule on the grounds that this very novel idea of giving the clerk of the House the instructions not to enroll a bill that's been passed by both House and Senate, I think is very troubling. Having said that, I think that the underlying bill merits the support of both Republicans and Democrats, and I will be voting yes. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Does the gentleman from California continue to reserve?
Madam Speaker, I'll continue to reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves the balance of his time. Gentleman from Colorado.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Doggett.
Gentleman from Texas is recognized for 2 minutes.
As one who voted for cutting some of President Obama's spending requests last year and who has already voted 3 times this year to cut spending from the budget, I believe we do need to ferret out every bit of unnecessary spending, to demand greater efficiency, and to seek common ground on securing our long-term financial future, our national debt. But this resolution is only a belated companion to the deal that tied a Christmas bow around another tax cut for the wealthiest few in December. It represents another unbalanced approach to achieving balance in our budget. There is no shared sacrifice here. And like that December deal, this concession literally sets up tomorrow's demand for adoption of the House Republican budget, a pathway to less economic, educational, and health care security. Instead of asking for a dime from ExxonMobil or other polluters, this deal makes severe cuts in the budget to assure us clean air and clean water. Instead of asking for $1 from General Electric or another of these giant corporations that won't pay their fair share of taxes, this places the burden on hundreds of thousands of young Americans who are trying to seek a future job in the United States. Almost 1/4 of the budget is eliminated for Youth Build, a program that provides vital education and employment skills to young people. In Austin, I've seen this up close, seen the difference that our local youth works makes in trails constructed, in homes weatherized, in the vital employment and training skills provided. With every energy-efficient home that a foundation is laid for, a foundation is laid for the future of some enterprising young Texan. And with another 100,000 young people at universities like Texas State losing the counseling, academic instruction, and tutoring.
Expired.
You have another 15 seconds?
Well, it's 15 seconds.
Instruction, tutoring, and encouragement from TRIO. That helps them achieve academic success. That's not balanced. Fair and balanced? Yes, I know it's a started slogan, but I think it could have real meaning for our budget. But this budget is balanced on our young people and our future.
Gentleman's time has expired.
We need a budget that's fair.
The gentleman from California continue to reserve.
Madam Speaker, I'll continue to reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Colorado.
Madam Speaker, I am proud to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Vermont, a former member of the Rules Committee, Mr. Welsh.
Gentleman from Vermont is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank the gentleman. America's in a very dangerous place on this budget, and it's not an unsolvable problem. We can get from where we are to where we need to be, and that is fiscal balance, if we put everything on the table and have a balanced approach. If instead we limit our consideration to essentially 12% of the budget, the so-called domestic discretionary, things like low-income heating assistance, the Small Business Administration, scholarships for our kids wanting to go to college, scientific research. If we limit our attention to that 12% of the budget, even if we cut that entire 12%, we would have trillion-dollar deficits for as long as the eye can see. It won't work. There's a design defect here. We've aggravated it with the deal that was made to extend the tax cuts at the high end when we were here in our special session after the last election. That's $750 billion that we have to borrow in order to pay for those tax cuts for the top 2%. We have to put everything on the table. It has to include the Pentagon. It has to include revenues. It has to include eliminating wasteful and unproductive, non-job generating tax expenditures like to mature and profitable industries like the oil industry. It has to include eliminating the ethanol subsidy, something that was promoted by the member from Oklahoma, Mr. Sullivan. We put everything on the table. We can get from where we are to where we need to be. One thing we also cannot do is start playing budgetary hostage-taking. And there is looming ahead of us the question of whether we will raise the debt ceiling or use that as a leverage point, as some are suggesting. This is not a leverage point. It's a moral obligation. America was in fiscal balance. In the 8 years of the Clinton administration, when he handed the keys over to the new president, Mr. Bush, there was a projected $5.7 trillion deficit, and I yield back. Thank you.
Gentleman from Colorado.
I'm prepared to close.
Then the gentleman goes ahead and close, and I'll do the same.
Gentleman from Colorado.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I again want to bring it back to the hypothetical American family, small business we're talking about, because the $1.399 trillion figure is boggling to most people. So lop off the zeros there and say, hey, I have a small business, I'm an American family, I lost $139,000 this next year. Let me tell you, is losing $137,000 the next year a step towards solvency or a step towards bankruptcy? I would submit, Madam Chair, ask any small businessman in America or a small businesswoman, losing $137,000 instead of $139,000 is a step towards bankruptcy. Just like that family, we in the United States Congress, we in this country, need to come together and make hard choices about where to find additional income, where to cut expenditures, how to get this budget out of red and into the black. That's the difference between where the Democrats stand and the proposal of our friends on the other side. And another difference, a Democratic president has actually balanced the budget. That's a claim that the other side can't make for more than a generation. It's clear that the Republicans are not serious about the deficit. If they were, this would be a different bill. Again, this is what we're talking about. Taking our nation another step down the road towards fiscal insolvency and leaving a legacy of debt for the next generation. Rather than holding the line on spending, the majority is feeding the beast. And yet, what did the Republicans cut rather than rooting out waste at the Pentagon? They cut $1.6 billion from the EPA's effort to protect public health and keep our air and water safe, $950 million from community development block grants to strengthen neighborhoods and create jobs, $815 million from FEMA grants that help communities prepare for disasters, $10 million to keep our food safe. When you look at the winners and losers in this budget, it becomes clear what the majority party does and does not value. And they clearly do not mind leaving the next generation a legacy of deficits and debt. What we're doing in this continuing resolution is increasing the favorite government spending of the majority party, running up the deficit, continuing big tax cuts for special interests while slashing the effort to educate our children, ensure access to health care, keep our air and water clean, oh, and while they're at it, taking away a woman's right to choose. This is where we could be by working together, Democrats and Republicans. This process, this rule, and this bill are not examples of working together to solve our budget crisis. We can do better. We must do better. To save America from bankruptcy, we must do better from sound and fury signifying nothing. We need to work together to make the cuts we need to make, to increase the revenues we need to increase, and to examine our entitlement programs, to put our nation on proper fiscal footing for the next generation and remove the mounting burden of debt that faces the next generation of Americans. I don't see how anyone can argue that somehow reducing, again at the family level, a $139,000 loss to a $137,000 loss, while it might be a fine thing to do, leaves that family in every bit as dangerous and precarious a fiscal situation as they were before. Ask any small businessman or small businesswoman in this country. And after passing this continuing resolution and keeping our government in business another year, we're just punting further down the field about making the cuts we all know we need to make to balance the budget, return to a surplus, and help remove the next generation of Americans from the legacy of debt that is threatening to crush them. I urge a no vote on the rule, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back the balance of his time. Gentleman from California.
Madam Speaker, I yield myself to the balance of time.
Gentleman's recognized.
Madam Speaker, according to the schedule, in about 9 minutes, the President of the United States at George Washington University is scheduled to give a very important address in which he's going to talk about fiscal responsibility, the need to bring about spending cuts and all, and how to get our economy growing. I want to congratulate the President I want to congratulate the President for coming to this position. It obviously is much different than what we've gone through so far. As I said earlier, we've had an 82% increase in non-defense discretionary spending. The President proposed a budget that has deficits in excess of $1.5 trillion and would exacerbate the debt. He came out a few weeks ago and proposed a freeze in spending. We know that if we not done what we are about to vote on here, with this rule-making order, a vote that will take place tomorrow, we would see an increase in spending of $78.5 billion. $78.5 billion more in spending if we had not taken the action that this House in a bipartisan way is about to take. But the reason I want to congratulate the President is that I've just taken a look at the early reports of what he's about to say in this speech. And he does call for us to look at the issue of entitlements. He specifically says Social Security, not Medicare or Medicaid, but he talks about Social Security. But I believe that is, again, a first step towards what I believe is absolutely essential, and that is for us in a bipartisan way to tackle the issue of entitlement spending. As Mr. Dix said in the Rules Committee yesterday, that's two-thirds of the spending. We know that entitlement spending is something that needs to be addressed, and there is bipartisan recognition that we need to get our fiscal house in order. And, Madam Speaker, what we have before us is a measure that I don't like. I don't like it. I don't believe that it does enough to reduce the size and scope and reach of government. I believe that we need to do more. But we have to remember that we've got to take that first step. Now, last November 2nd, the American people sent a very loud and powerful message to Washington, D.C. There are 96 newly elected members of this House. 9 of them happen to be Democrats. 87 of them are Republican. Now, Madam Speaker, I think it's important for us to recognize that that's a pretty powerful message. They were saying, end the nonsense. Bring an end to this dramatic expansion of government. And that's exactly what we're doing with this first step. Now, Margaret Thatcher, the great former Prime Minister of Great Britain, famously said, first you have to win the argument, then you win the vote. I believe that we've won the argument, Madam Speaker, because the message has come through. The message has come through that we are, in fact, going to have to get our fiscal house in order if we're going to ensure the strength and the preeminence of the greatest nation the world has ever known. And so, Madam Speaker, I'm going to urge my colleagues to support this rule, and tomorrow we'll have a vote on the continuing resolution itself, and then we will begin tomorrow, after we've had that vote, we will begin to debate the budget, which is going to be far-reaching, it's going to be difficult, but it is clearly the right thing for us to do. And I will say again, Madam Speaker, that I do hope that on these issues we will be able to continue to work together in a bipartisan way to solve our nation's problems. And with that, I yield back the balance of my time and move the previous question.
Gentleman yields back. The question is on ordering the previous question on the resolution. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposing no. No. The ayes have it.
Speaker, on that I ask for the yeas and the nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having arisen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of the Rule 20, further proceedings on this question will be postponed. Did it?
Resolution 219 and ask for its immediate consideration.
The The clerk will report the resolution.
House Calendar Number 30, House Resolution 219, resolved that at any time after the adoption of this resolution, the Speaker may, pursuant to Clause 2B of Rule 18, declare the House resolved into the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union for consideration of the bill H.R. 1217 to repeal the Prevention and Public Health Fund. The first reading of the bill shall be dispensed with. All points of order against consideration of the bill are waived. General debate shall be confined to the bill and shall not exceed 1 hour, equally divided and controlled by the Chair and Ranking Minority Member of the Committee on Energy and Commerce. After general debate, the bill shall be considered for amendment under the 5-minute rule. The bill shall be considered as read. All points of order against provisions in the bill are waived. No amendment to the bill shall be in order except those printed in the report of the Committee on Rules accompanying this resolution. Each such amendment may be offered only in the order printed in the report, may be offered only by a member designated in the report, shall be considered as read, shall be debatable for the time specified in the report, equally divided and controlled by the proponent and an opponent, shall not be subject to amendment, and shall not be subject to a demand for division of the question in the House or in the Committee of the Whole. All points of order against such amendments are waived. At the conclusion of consideration of the bill for amendment, the committee shall rise and report the bill to the House with such amendments as may have been adopted. The previous question shall be considered as ordered on the bill and amendments thereto to final passage without intervening motion, except one motion to recommit with or without instructions.
The gentlewoman from North Carolina is recognized for 1 hour.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. For the purpose of debate only, I yield the customary 30 minutes to the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Hastings, pending which I yield myself such time as I may consume. During consideration of this resolution, all time yielded is for the purpose of debate only. Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks.
Without objection.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. House Resolution 219 provides for a structured rule providing for consideration of H.R. 1217, which repeals the Prevention and Public Health Fund and rescinds any unobligated funds. Republicans are on the floor today to fulfill part of our pledge to America that we would cut spending and we would repeal the Democrats' health care bill passed a year ago. On January 19, this House passed H.R. 2 to repeal Obamacare completely. The ruling liberal Democrats in the Senate, however, have so far refused to consider H.R. 2, but House Republicans remain undeterred. We will repeal Obamacare piece by piece if that is what it takes. Because the liberal elites knew their government takeover of health care was unpopular and would likely have consequences at the ballot box, they included $105 billion in mandatory taxpayer spending in the law itself to protect their favorite programs. Let me take a moment to explain the difference between discretionary and mandatory government spending. First, it's important to remember that the federal government does not have any money of its own, as it has only what it takes in taxes from hardworking Americans or money that it borrows from foreign creditors and our future generations. We are currently borrowing 43 cents of every dollar that the federal government spends. Discretionary spending is appropriated by Congress annually and therefore subject to congressional oversight and review. Discretionary spending allows Congress to be wise stewards of the taxpayers' money by not funding ineffective or duplicative programs. However, what is called mandatory spending funds programs for people who meet certain criteria and occurs irrespective of congressional appropriations and must be spent whether we have the money or not. The most recognized mandatory spending programs are Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, which operate on autopilot and have not been subject to congressional oversight from year to year, as funds automatically stream from the Treasury to anyone who qualifies, that is, meets the criteria for a particular benefit. The bill before us today, H.R. 1217, would repeal a portion of mandatory Obamacare spending and eliminate a slush fund established for Health and Human Services Secretary Kathleen Sebelius. This slush fund, known as the Prevention and Public Health Fund, will automatically receive $1 billion when fiscal year 2012 begins in October of this year, with automatic increases every year until it reaches $2 billion annually in fiscal year 2015. However, there's a very important distinction between this funding and that for Medicare and Social Security, in that this funding does not state eligibility criteria. The liberal elites in Washington think they know how to spend the taxpayers' money better than individual taxpayers and gave Secretary Sebelius $2 billion a year until Congress acts to repeal her authority to spend without accountability. Republicans are rejecting this slush fund by considering this bill, which would repeal the fund and take back any money that has not already been spent this year. The slush fund is not subject to the annual appropriations process and therefore would not be subject to yearly congressional oversight. The money will be made available to the Secretary regardless of how she chooses to spend it and whether or not the programs being funded are actually effective. Again, this is not like Medicare and Social Security. There are no criteria for the spending of this money. It's important to point out that this bill does not cut any specific program because the slush fund is used by the Secretary to increase spending above congressionally appropriated levels for whatever program the Secretary chooses. My colleagues across the aisle will argue that this money is being used to train primary care physicians, to prevent obesity, and to encourage healthy lifestyles. What they won't tell you is that they have absolutely no idea how the money is being used because they abdicated the authority of Congress to an unelected bureaucrat. The simple truth is that the money is just as likely to be spent on elective abortion as it is for any other purpose. In the Democrats' dissenting views from the House Energy and Commerce Committee report, they say without mandatory spending for this slush fund, the programs will not be adequately funded. Well, Madam Speaker, that's what the whole process for appropriations is all about. If the programs need more money, it's up to them to come and justify that. However, they sang a different tune when liberal House Democrats rammed through a government takeover of health care in November 2009. They created this slush fund but made it subject to the regular appropriations process. That meant it was subject to yearly congressional oversight and direction for how the money would be spent. But when the ruling liberal Democrats in the Senate sent over their version of the health care bill, which became law, the slush fund had been made mandatory. The liberal elites claim they put in a safeguard because part of the section creating this slush fund states that Congress has the authority to direct how this funding is spent. Well, as any high school junior civics student could tell you, Congress always has the authority to direct, redirect, repeal, or increase funding. Congress can always pass a new law to change the direction of any funding stream. That's our job as legislators. The need to state explicitly that we have the authority to direct spending in a slush fund is pointless. The simple truth is that we have a spending crisis in this town in large part due to mandatory spending that operates on autopilot. Instead of working to address our unsustainable spending habits, the ruling Democrats refused even to offer a budget resolution last year or pass a single appropriations bill. The liberal elites failed to lead despite having unchecked control of all levers of power in Washington. I brought a chart with me today to help illustrate the fact that mandatory spending is out of control in Washington. Madam Speaker, let me show you that because of mandatory spending being on autopilot, by the year 2060, the mandatory spending will absorb all revenue coming into the federal government, all tax revenue coming into the federal government. That simply is unsustainable. We cannot operate our country when we let 3 programs take up all of the money that comes into the federal government. Something has to be done. And yet the Democrats want to add another program to this, which would speed up this process. We don't need that. As Washington liberals ignored the growing autopilot spending crisis, adding more unaccountable mandatory spending in the hands of unelected bureaucrats, House Republicans are now working hard to protect the future for our children and grandchildren by restoring congressional oversight of spending. Now, I'm sure many Americans are wondering how a slush fund with a clever title would be spent and why it must be put on autopilot. Let me give you an example. Pitt County in my home state of North Carolina received funding from this fund to fix prices at convenience stores so that healthy foods would be less expensive and therefore supposedly more attractive to the consumer. In addition, the Pitt County Health Department now plans to use some of this money to put up signs indicating the location of public parks, bike lanes, and alternate transportation. Although I'm certainly not opposed to parks or healthy eating habits, it seems quite clear that the founders of this country did not intend the Federal Department of Health and Human Services in Washington, D.C. to use taxpayer money to subsidize granola bars or purchase signs for bike lanes or parks. The federal government has no business paying for local and community initiatives such as these, especially when we're borrowing 43 cents of every dollar the federal government spends to pay for it. The new House Republican majority is ready to lead this country out of our debt crisis, and it starts with voting for this rule and the underlying bill, which will save taxpayers $16 billion. And with that, Madam Speaker, I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentlewoman reserves the balance of her time. Gentleman from Florida.
Madam Speaker, I thank the gentlelady for yielding me the time, and I will take such time at this time as I may require.
Gentleman is recognized.
Obviously, this measure amends the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act and seeks to repeal those provisions that establish and appropriate funds to the Prevention and Public Health Fund. It also rescinds any unobligated balance appropriated to the fund. As I listen to my friend from North Carolina, two things jump out at me immediately. One is her usage and the ruling Republican majority's House members' usage of the term for the affordable health care as Obamacare. I said earlier in the Rules Committee, I guess I could call it Hastings Care, because I supported, as did many members of this Congress who are still here and some who are not, on both sides of the aisle, supported health care provisions for America long before any of us knew Barack Obama's name. When it's used the way that it is, it's in some manner attempting to be demeaning of the President. He does not bear the sole responsibility for the Affordable Health Care Act. I would assume some of that responsibility, and what I would say is he and many others in this body did not go far enough in that we did not establish universal health care for all Americans in this country. The other thing that jumps out on this particular matter, calling it a slush fund, and then allowing that it is going to be in the hands of an unelected bureaucrat. It puts us in a strange position in the House of Representatives when my colleagues with the ruling majority of the House of Representatives have sought and been successful to eliminate the opportunities for members of Congress on both sides of the aisle to seek to have appropriations earmarked for respective undertakings in their congressional districts. Rather, they would eliminate those earmarks and guess what? Put it in the hands of unelected bureaucrats. So I find it inconsistent to make the argument on one hand and then on the other hand say, oh, it's okay for the unelected bureaucrats to have some opportunities to spend our money. Quite frankly, I take umbrage with that. I think I can do a better job defining a need for a treatment plant in Belgrade than can an unelected bureaucrat. The burden of chronic diseases such as cancer, diabetes, heart disease, hypertension, and stroke present a significant public health challenge to all of our communities and our nation as a whole. In my home state of Florida, over 10 million cases of 7 chronic diseases, cancers, diabetes, heart disease, hypertension, stroke, mental disorders, and pulmonary conditions, were reported early on in this decade at the cost of about $17.6 billion in treatment and resulting in $68.7 billion in lost productivity and economic costs. Simply put, we have a sick care system, not a health care system. Tens of millions of Americans are suffering from health conditions that could possibly be preventable. And this is further exacerbated by the continuing rise of health care costs. Despite the fact that chronic diseases are responsible for 7 out of 10 deaths among Americans each year, and that they account for 75% of our nation's health care spending, less than 3% of our health care spending goes to preventive health care services and health promotion. As you know, the Affordable Care Act, or the Hastings Care Act, or the Hastings and Obama Care Act, or the Hastings and Obama and Democrat Care Act, created the Prevention and Public Health Fund in order to assist state and community efforts in preventing illness and promoting health. The Prevention and Public Health Fund represents an unprecedented investment of $15 billion over 10 years to help prevent disease, detect it early, and manage conditions before they become severe. It aims to transform the focus of our system of care from primarily treating illness to maintaining long-term wellness by leveraging the power of preventive medicine. Through the Community Transformation Grants Program, for example, the fund empowers state and local governments and partners to implement community prevention interventions that help reduce chronic disease and health care disparities. In fact, the fund is already being used in all 50 of our states and the District of Columbia to prevent smoking, increase physical activity, reduce alcohol and drug abuse, increase immunizations, train the nation's public health workforce, prevent the spread of HIV/AIDS, and help control the obesity epidemic in our country. In addition, the Prevention and Public Health Fund provides funding for states to help develop a health insurance exchange by 2014. Footnote there, we should have had a public option, where consumers will have access to a new market of more affordable quality health coverage, as well as funding for up to 400 school-based centers in order to provide a safety net and improved access to care for children. Since the enactment of the Hastings Care / Obamacare / Democratic Care / Republicans Don't Care measure last year, the Department of Health and Human Services has awarded approximately $21.98 million in grants to organizations in Florida alone through the Prevention and Public Health Fund to help improve wellness and prevention efforts, including more than $9.3 million for community and clinical prevention, more than $3.1 million for public health infrastructure, and more than $9.4 million for primary care training. If we are to reduce health care costs, we must improve the health of all Americans. Investing in proven preventive measures can significantly reduce the risk of developing these diseases and improving people's lives and saving money. According to a report from Trust for America's Health entitled Prevention for a Healthier America, investing just $10 per person per year in proven community-based programs that increase physical activity, improve nutrition, and prevent smoking and other tobacco use could save our nation more than $16 billion annually within 5 years. This is equivalent to and potentially greater than the amount as estimated by the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, by which H.R. 1217 reduces direct spending over a 10-year period. Furthermore, a public opinion survey by Trust for America and the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation found that 71% of Americans favor an increased investment in disease prevention. The Prevention and Public Health Fund is also supported by nearly 600 national organizations, including the American Diabetes Association, the American Heart Association, the American Lung Association, Families USA, and the AIDS Institute. H.R. 1217, on the other hand, is nothing more than an attack on affordable health insurance, primary care, and safety net care for children. This bill is yet another feeble attempt by the ruling majority Republicans to disrupt, dismantle, and ultimately destroy the Hastings Care / Obamacare / Democratic Care / Republicans Don't Care bill, one piece at a time, including those programs that have already been funded and are helping millions of middle-class, elderly, and working poor Americans and their families as we speak. The misinformation that pervades the health care debate in this country never ceases to amaze me at all. My friends, on the other side of the aisle, the ruling Republican majority would have the American people believe that the Prevention and Health Fund is a slush fund for the Secretary of Health and Human Services to spend money freely without congressional oversight. This is simply not true. A specific funding amount is allocated for prevention efforts through the fund each year during the fiscal period. $500 million in 2010, $750 million in 2011, $1 billion in fiscal year 2012, and so on, up to $2 billion beginning in 2015. This gives the Secretary, whomever she or he may be, under Republicans or Democrats, the flexibility and health care providers or the funding certainty that the need to implement prevention and public health interventions that help Americans make healthier decisions for themselves and their families. The Prevention and Public Health Fund is the first and only federal program with dedicated ongoing resources specifically designed to improve the public's health. It represents our commitment to preventing illness and investing in our nation's long-term physical and fiscal health. Let me say this, Madam Speaker. Every day that I awaken, I start my day by trying to figure what can I do to follow the scriptural mandate to help the least of us. I'm curious whether my friends in the ruling majority have the same feeling.
Reserve. Gentlewoman from North Carolina.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to just point out one small thing to my colleague from Florida. Yes, I do begin every day wondering how I can make life better for other people. But I want to say that there is no accountability whatsoever in this provision of the bill, and we want accountability for every penny of money that we are spending on behalf of American taxpayers. I'd now like to recognize, for such time as she may consume, Congresswoman Elmers from the great state of North Carolina.
Gentlewoman from North Carolina is recognized for...
Thank you to my learned colleague from North Carolina, and thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today in support of the rule and the 2011 budget agreement that we have passed. We've already heard some of the aspects that this budget agreement addresses, and I'm going to address some additional aspects. I am very pleased to see this House once again value the culture of life. The FY11 budget now reinstates the D.C. Hyde Amendment to ensure that no congressionally appropriated funds, federal or local, are used to pay for elective abortions. According to the Susan B. Anthony List President Marjorie Dannenfelser, Congress will save the lives of an estimated 1,000 unborn children when it votes to reinstore this amendment, banning the use of taxpayer dollars to pay for elective abortions in the District of Columbia. It adjusts the UN Family Planning Agency funding from $55 million to $40 million. It adjusts international population control family planning funding from $648 million to $575 million. It adjusts Title X domestic family planning funding from $300 million, which is a cut of $17 million. This budget also calls for an up or down vote in both the House and the Senate, Madam Speaker, on the defunding of Planned Parenthood. While the fight is certainly not over, we are making great strides in the ongoing effort to not only get our country on a strong fiscal footing, but honor the value of lives born and unborn. I thank you, and I yield back the remainder of my time.
Gentlewoman yields back the balance of her time. Gentleman
Madam
from
Speaker, just so
Florida.
as I can register, would you please give me the amount of time remaining on both sides?
Yes. Gentleman from Florida has 18 minutes remaining. The gentlewoman from North Carolina has 18 minutes remaining as well.
Thank you very much,
Gentleman
Madam
from Florida.
Speaker. At this time, I'm very pleased to yield 2 minutes to my good friend from Illinois, Mr. Davis.
Gentleman from Illinois is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I want to thank the gentleman from Florida for yielding. You know, I was thinking we are approaching Mother's Day, and I thought of my mother. When it came to budgeting and appropriating money, she did not always have a great deal to work with. But she was a great budget analyst. She was an absolute wizard at crunching numbers. And she was an expert on knowing what worked and what did not. As a matter of fact, she often told us that an ounce of prevention was worth much more than a pound of cure. And so she knew that when it came to health care, prevention measures are worth much more than their weight in gold. She knew that it would be penny-wise and pound-foolish to cut or reduce the meager resources which we expend towards health education, health awareness, health promotion, and health screening. And if we don't think public health activities work, look for some cigarette smoke or cigar. Public health activities work, look for some cigarette smoke or cigar smoke in these chambers. Look at the difference in the cost of treating lung cancer and cirrhosis of the liver versus preventing these diseases from occurring. In Illinois, we have a very proactive public health program, and we don't want to see it reduced, diminished, or eliminated. Yes, we do need to cut spending, and we are cutting spending. But let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater. Let's not be penny-wise and pound-foolish. Let's vote down this rule, and let's vote down H.R. 1217, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from North Carolina is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we're here today to save taxpayers' money by cutting wasteful government spending. And the program that we are cutting out, we cannot be sure does anything for preventive health care because it's designated that, but there's no idea where the money's going to be spent. Republicans certainly want to see Americans do a better job of preventing disease and making their health care better. But what we fear is that this money may be used for elective abortions. So we are also here today to speak for those who cannot speak for themselves. This slush fund directs the Secretary of Health and Human Services to invest in prevention and primary care by funding programs and initiatives under the Public Health Services Act. Title 10 of the Public Health Services Act provides funding for the abortion industry, including organizations like Planned Parenthood, the largest abortion provider in the country. Mr. Speaker, my colleagues across the aisle and the liberals in Washington have really outdone themselves to ensure their favored constituencies are provided for in their new health care law. This slush fund is yet another Democrat trick to use taxpayer money to subsidize elective abortion. Despite what they may have you believe, supporters of taxpayer-funded elective abortion cannot honestly claim this money cannot be used for elective abortion under Title 10. The liberal Democrat elites relinquished all authority over this slush fund to Secretary Sebelius. For far too long, abortion providers have used Title 10 money to subsidize their operating costs and thereby subsidize elective abortion. We've heard a lot of misinformation being circulated in Washington this week about Planned Parenthood, the largest elective abortion provider in the country. As I pointed out in the Rules Committee last night, one of my colleagues across the aisle said that Republicans were, quote, here to kill women, and compared us to Nazis. Liberal Democrats maintain that women will lose access to preventive care if the government stops funding for the abortion industry. What they are not telling you is that Planned Parenthood has almost $1 billion in net assets and reported $737 million in revenues for its most recent filing year. Any big abortion organization making $737 million a year should be able to function without taxpayer subsidies, Mr. Speaker. This is not about women's health or access to preventive care. Through federal and state Medicaid programs, low-income women have access to family planning and preventive health services at hospitals, doctors' offices, and community health centers nationwide. Another claim Planned Parenthood makes is that 97% of the 3 million patients they served in fiscal 2008 received preventive care services and only 3% received abortions. These supporters of taxpayer-funded abortion ought to check their math. According to their own fact sheet for March 2011, Planned Parenthood clinics performed 332,278 abortions in fiscal year 2008. If they saw 3 million patients and performed 332,278 abortions, that means at least 11% of the services provided were abortions. If they cannot be trusted regarding this simple math, what else are they hiding from the American people, Mr. Speaker? Another astounding statistic I would like to share is that 97.6% of pregnant women who receive services at a Planned Parenthood clinic received abortions. Only 2.4% of pregnant women received only prenatal or adoption referral services at Planned Parenthood. Elective abortion is not health care, Mr. Speaker. This is not about preventive health care or improving access to primary care. This is about subsidizing the big abortion industry. If this slush fund remains unchecked, the Secretary can fund whatever program she chooses to the tune of up to $2 billion a year. That kind of money can purchase a lot of elective abortions, which strikes at the conscience of so many taxpayer-paying Americans. Again, I urge my colleague to vote in favor of this rule